All right, boys. Skill resets are coming. Lots of people are probably gonna ask, hey, which ones to skill reset? So here we are. If you guys didn't know, and you probably, if you didn't like use your skill resets, they do stay in your inventory from the previous skill resets that they have done. They give out 3 of these items, but then they just re-enable it again. So you guys could have something. If you check your inventory material, you might have a little bit more skill resets than you would anticipate. So it's not just the 3 skill resets that's probably they're gonna give this time around. To determine really what skills to reset, what units to reset, I think it is probably just more important to see what units are good right now, what are the meta units right now. And so let's talk about the different meta units in the different teams or setups content. And in particular, we'll be talking about Solar Raid, and then PvP, and then Union Raid. And then technically the campaign teams are also gonna carry over from one of those 3 also. So let's start talking about it. Let's start off with the Solar Raid. I did try to set up different things in the Solar Raid here. This is the current setup for this upcoming Solar Raid. It's just an idea behind it, but it is gonna be iron effective, so advantage. So I try to put like an iron for each of the teams. So we do have these. So let's start talking about these for now. So we have the classic T and Naga, and typically we do put in Red Hood in there with D, and D will also buff Red Hood. And since this is an iron advantage team, we do want Red Hood to be very buff. So typically with Red Hood, it comes along. You could use Alice, you could use Maxwell, but there's other things too. But depending on the content, the Tianaga team does change, right? Sometimes if there's an enemy with core and the boss is weak to wind, for example, then that's when Scarlet Black Shadow comes in with Alice. So it does change up a little bit depending on what kind of content it is. Now, this team, the bunnies, slowly but surely, the bunnies are slowly getting differentiated. I think before I talked with this team in particular for the bunnies, I think it might be good to try to talk about the other teams that we have been cooking, because I'll get back to this, because from what it looks like here, why is Snow White here? Why is the Yulha here? And because I've kind of dropped down this team to team 4 or 5. Let's start off the most common one, or the probably most stable one in particular. It's the Summer Anise team with Dorothy and Biscuit for Solar Raid. That is the most common one. And then your last one is anything that the raid demands. Now after this is, I am trying to keep thinking of what if Crown is out now. So this is where the litter comes in. This is where Modernia and Ludmilla, and I put in Maxwell in here, and then Crown in the Burst 2 category. And if you do need heals, if we do end up needing healing still on top of it, then you can replace Maxwell with Helm, with the regular Helm. And I have Miranda here, and then Rem will buff Scarlet Black Shadow, and also I need a fast charger because this team doesn't have a fast charger character, sniper rifle, or rocket launcher in it. And then lastly, I'm using Summer Helm. For this boss in particular, you need an iron unit to deal with the shield, and so we have Summer Helm, which also, by the way, she also synergizes with the skill 2 to increase the damage taken. And she doesn't have to burst on that or anything. She can be just on the side chilling. So we're using Summer Helm to deal with that. And also she has a cooldown reduction because this team doesn't really have any cooldown reduction. Just initial theory crafting for this upcoming Solar Raid, but you kind of get the idea which one are the kind of top units right now. If I have to be very specific though and boil it down to which ones are kind of used in a lot of scenarios still, it'll be these characters and these characters. I'm gonna replace this with Maxwell. So these characters, and let me replace this with Litter. And then this one, the empty ones are typically the flex spots. And then for this one, you could I would even say there are gonna be probably situations where you don't even use the Snow White or Yulha. So there's that, and then maybe some other top tier units. There's probably gonna be another top tier unit that's gonna come out later down the road in future solar raids. That's gonna be good for those elements in particular. And then the most obvious ones are these. So those are kind of like the units that are top tier for solar raid. If I have to add in, because I'm in this section already, how do I fill in the top tier units for campaign? I typically have them set up to be like this. This is my top tier team on campaign. I use Red Hood as a burst one actually, and I don't use, and then I use Modernia for wave clearing, and then Alice for boss clearing. Alternatively, you can also use this team where you use Modernia and then Scarlet Black Shadow, and then Red Hood I will be using for fast charging, so I manually control Red Hood to fast charge in this situation instead of Alice, and you do burst with Modernia and Scarlet Black Shadow. Now that's the typical setup for my campaign team. It allows you, using Red Hood as your burst one category, allows you to exceed just the recommended CP by about like 30-40%, just being way under the power level that is recommended. Not everyone's gonna have that, and sometimes it turns out like this where you start using litter. But that's the general idea of the top tier units. In the most recent chapters, for chapter 28, 27, you do have an electric advantage. So some people, you might see some have used Summer Anise and Scarlet to help along because of elemental advantage. Overall, you can start swapping things around for elemental, but that's gonna vary from different units to different units. Yeah, there's just a lot of combinations, but it generally boils down to these units in particular: Scarlet Black Shadow, Alice, Tia Naga, Red Hood, Modernia. That would be the primary ones that I actually use now and pushing really hard on campaign. So now let's talk about PvP that are really good. So the top units for PvP right now. Now the team that I'm gonna show is just one example. PvP does have kind of a different meta between defense and offense, and typically on offense people do switch it around, but the general idea of the important units is something to still talk about right now. The PvP units that are kind of being used right now, obviously you have Scarlet, you have Blanc, and in Blanc you can actually also replace it with Miracle Fairy Anne, and then you have regular Anise, Emilia, and Jackal. Something to keep in mind though is, in particular, regular Anise, Emilia, and Jackal are more really used right now for their energy generation, not as much as their skill. So if you want to skill reset them, that is something of an option. If you have exceeded on investing on them, like say maybe level 6s or higher, I think it's okay to skill reset them. Most people just typically for PvP specific teams, they would just like keep it at level 4s. Now, so that's one team, and then another team is the Noah team, and I'm putting in Red Hood here. There are many substitutes on this. One note in particular is replacing Red Hood with Scarlet Black Shadow or Summer Anise, and I don't have Summer Anise here because it's on the other team, but you can use Summer Anise also. That's the most common one. Out of all of these units, I would say the PvP, these are the main PvP units, right? Like Noise, Noah, Senti, and Rapunzel. I think it is okay to just keep them all at level 4s on skills, and then if you have over invested on them like level 6 onwards, that is something to consider if you're not very big into PvP. And the last team that I'm showing here is just the electric team that is using Moron with Biscuit and taking advantage of Summer Anise. And then I have Maiden and Drake to just kind of complement with Summer Anise. This is just one example. Now let's start moving into other teams as well. There's going to be a lot of overlaps here, but for Union Raid, the teams is more about building in the different elements on it. So for example, if it's a fire advantage, I would select this kind of team, which is using Alice and Modernia with the bunnies and litter. And then if we're going with the water team advantage, then it would be Dorothy with Ludmilla, Ram. There's no other better water DPS that really works well on Union Raid. I would say Scarlet Black Shadow is okay, because if you're using Rem in here. Iron, this is where people would use like Red Hood, Maxwell. Wind team, I'm using the bunnies with Scarlet Black Shadow and Alice. Electric is, there's two electric teams. One is the Dorothy team as well. So if you're not like using the water team, you can use the electric team here. And let's say maybe you're using Rem somewhere else and Ludmilla somewhere else, then you can do like a Quincy here. So that's one example. That's one electric team. And then the other electric team is the shotgun team. It's a very niche team right now, does require 3 different investments: Tove, Leona, Maid Privity. However, I would say if there's any core investments in them, you could actually even remove Leona. You could even start using Crown with this team, so I kind of foresee that, or Rem for example. But if there's any more core in the shotgun team, I would say it would be Tove. You could skill reset Leona, that is an option. And anything that I didn't mention, you can really replace. There are some units that you could have possibly invested and you could start like resetting, and it's gonna vary depending on prioritization. For example, if you're into solo raid, then you might want to keep some units not reset. You could do Masked, you could do Elegg, you could do Novel, Guilty, and Marciana. Some people that have kind of invested on them. Marciana has been replaced by Rem. Guilty is, yeah, she's just mainly a DPS. There's not much other place on it, and like I mentioned on the shotgun team, it is pretty restrictive. Novel is slowly starting to lose her steam. I do think that she can still find some niche use, like with maybe with Snow White and Maxwell, or burst type units that do work, that can take advantage of her debuff for a short period of time. But since, especially with Crown coming in, or in terms of Union Raid situation, Novel is completely out of the equation nowadays. There's just gonna be that possibility, and I think we probably wouldn't be using Novel if it wasn't for the iron advantage upcoming here. Elegg is, this is another thing for the Dorothy team, and same with Mask. Lastly, the other ones also that you probably have invested and probably haven't gotten the chance to, just a reminder: Guillotine is one, A2 is another, 2B, Sugar, Dala. These are okay to reset for me. That's kind of how I see them. 2B is a pretty niche use. I do see her being used also still on the fire advantage. For majority of the people, I think it's okay. There's gonna be a lot more top tier units that can be replaced. A2 is another option as well. There's just a lot of limitations right now on rocket launchers. I've talked about it. There's just a lot more other options that you can use also. And Guillotine, unfortunately, she does provide like a pretty a lot of restriction, that she has to be low HP. It's very difficult to maintain her. But I think I could actually see her being used also with Crown also. That's one thing, because Crown has shield, so she can be kept alive with Crown. Sugar, that's another option. Dala, her skills are not really that high scaling, so I think it's okay. The reason why you would use Dala in particular, if anything, is primarily her cooldown reduction, which doesn't need to be skill up anywhere. So like, if I've seen some accounts that have like level 7 skills plus on Dala, like you can totally like yoink that. You can keep her if anything, 441. You don't even need to upgrade her burst. So yeah, I would say those are the ones that the units that I think that people would have probably invested, and you can probably start resetting. There's other ones that we didn't mention. Those are also okay to skill reset if I didn't mention them, because these are the meta teams right now. But yeah, hey, listen, I just wanted to get that because skill reset's coming. You guys are probably gonna start asking on it. We do account reviews, and this is probably gonna be the most common question that's gonna come out. So we'll figure things more out as Crown comes out. When Crown is live, I will see you guys there. I'll be live, we'll be pulling, and we'll be testing. That's be it. I'll see you guys next time.